This is Chat Dragon, a talk show and actual play podcast about sci-fi, fantasy, and the world's most beloved game of make-believe, Dungeons & Dragons. My name is Jared, and I'm your host. I am a newspaper reporter by day and a dungeon master by night. I decided to start this podcast for purely selfish reasons, and that is to have a reason to talk to interesting people about interesting topics, all through the lens of D&D. Each episode, I talk to friends, family members, and tabletop role-playing creatives about this beloved hobby. The conversations are driven by dice, and the games driven by our imaginations. All right, good evening, afternoon, morning, everyone. This is the Chat Dragon podcast. This should be episode 4, I think, at this point. I'm back again with my cousin Jeff. This time we are not playing D&D, but we're going to talk a little bit about the game that we played together and just kind of talk about some other stuff as well. So Jeff, how was it? How was the D&D game this afternoon that we played?
I thought it was a blast. I'm sure the listener can tell that I am new to this kind of thing, but I could see myself doing this more frequently and getting better at it. Like it's fun, but you wonder, like, how much can I introduce during my turn, and what's up to the dungeon master? Like, I don't want to steal the dungeon master's thunder. I'm always wondering, like, what elements can I introduce during my turn, and what's just up to the roll of the dice? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I know Trevor, when he was on, said it kind of made him think differently too, because knowing that there was other people who were going to, I guess, have to deal with whatever gets decided. So,
right.
So you're doing the first flashback of this character, so you've established some major backstory for him at this point. So
he's an improv comic or jester, a failed improv jester performer, and he's a crappy werewolf hunter. He's not very good at it, is he?
Yeah. So just for the listener who maybe didn't listen to the last episode, Jeff was standing at a crossroads, not a crossroads, but like a fork in a road, supposedly waiting to fight some werewolves or hunt a werewolf, and instead was jumped by some bandits. Jeff, do you want to kind of tell the listener who maybe didn't listen to the first episode we did together about what happened exactly? Just kind of do a recap.
Yeah. So I introduced the fact that Marigold had murdered an audience participant at an improv show, and maybe that marked the end of his improv career. And to make ends meet, he was taking on side jobs, one of which was to hunt down this werewolf in this crossroads in the dead of night. And after searching some bushes, he came across a young, earnest farm boy, and the two of them were jumped by bandits, and we learned that the bandits were sort of playing the role of werewolf. But at some point, a real wolf does attack everyone. Twist. That was a twist.
Mm-hmm. What made you decide to go with the improv comic angle? Is it because you live in Second City, you live in Chicago, and improv's a big thing there?
I mean,
or is it,
where'd
it come from?
We are steeped in that here in Chicago, but when you sent me the character sheet, the drawing I'm looking at looks like a clean-shaven Jason Mantzoukas. So I thought improv. That's where my mind went.
The little token character had a beard, so maybe it was a false beard or something.
Exactly.
Maybe he was still dressed up for his improv.
It was like phases of Mantzoukas. Like there, we got the clean-shaven and the bearded, and I couldn't break away from that mode of thinking.
Speaking of Jason Mantzoukas, have you ever watched Amoeba Record Store? They do What's in My Bag. Are you familiar with this?
I have, yeah.
YouTube
I've seen that
thing.
He goes deep.
Have you seen his episode?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, he's got some pretty interesting choices, and apparently his background is in music, which I would have never guessed because he's such a talented improv comedian. So
I believe he was like a jazz fusion drummer or a jazz drummer, and yeah, he goes to the record store and he comes away with like Thai street music, which is fascinating to listen to. I can't remember what else he had, but his musical taste runs deep.
Yeah, I really like grew to appreciate that guy more after that episode. I mean, I don't know. I always feel like that's a good YouTube show. Like, just you find some gems on there you never would have found out about, you know? Yes,
because in this, I'm going to sound like a geriatric millennial now, but in this day and age, where Spotify is feeding you an algorithm like, here's what you like based on what you listen to, it's refreshing to watch someone walk through a physical record store and like pick out favorites and stumble upon things like we used to do. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I've talked to my son about, used to go to the store and it'd have headphones, and you put the headphones on and you'd listen to some random record, and sometimes you would just buy a record because you're like, oh, it has a cool cover.
Yeah.
And it's in the rock section.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, it's probably good. And then it might suck.
Yes.
You never know.
One of the episodes of our podcast, Cruel to Rewind, that we did was Harriet the Spy, the Nickelodeon movie from the 90s, I believe. And this soundtrack really hit us hard. It when I listened to the soundtrack, it felt like going to a Borders bookstore back in the 90s in the music section and just sampling like the soul jazz and the singer-songwriter, and it was just very eclectic. So I love that feeling of walking through a record store.
Absolutely. I mean, I know this is a D&D podcast, but another hobby of mine, and maybe it's one you share because you're a musician, is vinyl record collecting. And such a millennial hipster thing to do at this day and age. But it's like Barnes & Noble or Borders. They don't really have CDs you can sit there and listen to, but they sell vinyl.
Yep.
And I'm like, I like the idea of vinyl, but it is kind of like depressing that you can't just pull it out and like put it on a turntable and see what you're spinning, before you buy it.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of a pain. I don't collect a lot of vinyl. I do, like, a few times a year I will like nerd out and put on some vinyl and just sit and enjoy and let it wash over me. But if you're looking for that kind of experience on your phone, check out the Bandcamp app. It's really cool. There's all these indie artists putting out great music, and the sound quality is great. But again, we're getting away from D&D, but try it out. It's fun.
Yeah. So, Jeff, I know you haven't played a lot of D&D. So I guess I know what your history is with the game, or at least I think I do.
Yeah.
But could you tell the listener kind of what your history is with the game exactly?
The deepest I ever went was that Hero Quest that came out. Do you remember that? It came with a VHS tape.
Yeah. It's not. I don't think it's called Hero Quest because it's in my living room. You gave it to me.
Is it?
It's yeah. But I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Had a VHS tape.
It's babies.
And I think it was made by TSR, which is the original publishers of Dungeons and Dragons. So
it is baby's first D&D, very simple. So a layman like myself can get into it, because I mentioned this on the last episode, but I'm all for fantasy. Like, I'm like PC role-playing games and video games. I'm all about it, your Might and Magics, your Morrowinds, the whole Elder Scrolls series, Final Fantasy, love that, some JRPG action. But I've never gotten into creating the story yourself as you go, and that's fascinating to me, and it's something I'd like to do more of.
Yeah, so we actually play a campaign, or doing a campaign together right now, which is I call it the Temps, where you guys are basically interviewing for a temp agency to become part-time or contract adventurers for future quests later on.
It's a fun mix.
And you had...
Go ahead.
Oh, no. And you had two characters, because we're starting real low level. We're doing kind of a Dungeon Crawl Classic style where you have a few different characters you play, and whoever winds up alive at the end of it is going to be probably the person you end up playing in the future.
Yeah.
I think one of them died, though, right?
Yes, one of my with the two characters, I tried to play one of them sort of safe, savvy. She's an older working woman with a past, with a dark past. She was a bandit in her 20s, and now she's trying to clean things up and join this company. And she's sort of playing the game. Sometimes she falls back into her old habits, but she's a little savvier and she knows how to survive. The other character was sort of young and naive and trying to make a name for himself. And, I pushed him kind of hard, and he is dead now.
Yeah, he wound up getting his arm ripped off.
Yes.
I think he got his face got burned, maybe.
He sort of wound up, in my mind, it was like, did you ever see the Phantom of the Opera with Robert Englund? It was like the horror version of Phantom of the Opera. Did you ever see that?
I never saw it. I remember the VHS cover, because that's how old we are, as VHSs was a thing.
Remember that? Remember videotapes? Yeah, I that's what I pictured his face, melted like that. And his girlfriend was eaten by a bugbear, by the way. So that was tragic as well.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking you were talking about Robert Englund, but then I realized you're talking about
sorry.
Your character.
Yes.
And just for the listeners, Robert Englund, he was the original Freddy Krueger, isn't he?
There you go. He was Freddy.
Or was there ever another Freddy Krueger?
Yeah, I think the dude, he played Rorschach in the Watchmen film. He played Freddy Krueger in a reboot.
Yeah.
What's his name? Crudup. No. Crap.
No, Crudup was the guy who was naked the whole time.
Naked. Okay, not naked.
That was Dr. Manhattan.
Roar.
Was Crudup. He was in the Bad News Bears as well as a kid.
Yes, very good, very good. Watchmen movie. I'm so sorry to be typing.
That's fine. I think he was in Shutter Island as well. I can think of all the movies he's in. I can't think of his name, though.
Jackie Earle Haley.
Yeah.
I believe he played Freddy Krueger at some point.
Okay.
Isn't that neat, listener?
A little bit of trivia.
Anyway.
Yeah, so now you're kind of getting your feet wet in D&D. Is it, I guess, and now you've actually played it with real dice. So yeah. I asked Trevor this because he's played it more than you, but we played a lot of digital games. So what's your take? Do you like real dice, or do you prefer to roll the digital ones?
I really enjoy.
Or are you indifferent?
I love the real dice. It's got this at least the dice you sent me has sort of a jade greenish kind of it's like it was unearthed, like a miner found it and carved it into dice. It's really cool looking. I like the tactile feel.
Cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
So what made you, I guess you said you've always kind of been into fantasy in terms of PC games.
Yep.
But what do you think kept you away from, the paper and pencil or paper and pen for so long? Or in this case, the computer screen, I don't know.
Probably the effort. I think I just, I can turn on the computer and be engrossed in Morrowind. That's pretty cool. I think it's just laziness. Somebody else already programmed this whole experience. But now, it playing D&D returns you to this childlike place where you're inventing the lore and the actions, and I feel that it's a muscle that needs to be flexed continuously to get a good story out of each play. So I think it's just laziness.
Yeah. I feel like Trevor and I kind of touched on that too. It's sort of that, I guess, talking in a different context or in a different conversation, that it lets you flex an imaginative muscle that, when you get to a certain age in life, maybe isn't as encouraged to use, unless you're, working in Hollywood or something in Los Angeles. But, being from the Midwest, you grow up, turn 18 and either go to college or you work in a factory.
Yeah.
But,
right.
After you get out of college, you might still work in a factory, or you get a job, doing something. Who knows? Yep. So
exactly, and the imagination is stifled in the process.
Yeah, and I think we're both people who work in creative fields. I mean, you said you do marketing, you do like public relations, you got to write and stuff, and I work as a newspaper reporter, but I'm not telling my story, so it's sort of it's kind of nice to just pretend, play make believe once in a while.
Exactly, and that's why this podcast is so cool, because you can tell a creative story and tell your story in the process, and have other people on to tell theirs. It's an interesting mix to go from playing the game to the follow-up interview. That's a cool format.
Yeah. So Jeff, I know we've talked a little bit about your podcast in the previous episode, but you're also a pretty accomplished, you're a musician. You've been in some bands. You've performed with some people, that have gone on to do big things in the music world. So you want to tell us a little bit about your music? Sure. I know it's always so.
Well, I like to tell people, I don't know if this is corny now. It probably is, but my musical journey begins with repeated van rides with my mom playing the Big Chill soundtrack on cassette, just over and over. So it was like mainlining Motown over and over and over, like these same Motown songs. And I think it made an impression, because I started playing saxophone in that style in 5th grade, I think. I started playing saxophone. And then later on in college, sort of a late bloomer as a vocalist, but I started singing in front of people in college in my early 20s. And from there, I performed in college bars and theaters, and performed on cruise ships for a while. But yeah, it's been like a 15-year run of music. I think I mentioned this on the last episode, sort of semi-retirement right now. I haven't performed in a while. But the podcast I do with my wife does give some opportunities to create music for the podcast, at the very least. So I'm flexing that muscle in that way.
As someone who is, been, I guess you could say you're a professional musician for a while. You made money doing it.
15 years.
Yeah. How would you, how big a role would you say like music plays in, say, like a PC fantasy role playing game, or even like a D&D? Do you find that music adds to the experience, or do you think it kind of takes away from the fun? Where do you stand in terms of a good soundtrack for these sorts of things?
I think it's essential. I think it's, maybe it's I don't know if some of the music you hear in role-playing games is cliche or expected, but I think among hardcore fans, like for instance, the soundtrack to Elder Scrolls Morrowind is like legendary. Like it's just, like people love that soundtrack. It just puts you in the moment, puts you in this fantastical world. So yeah, I think it's very important. Now,
cool.
back in the day on like an Apple II, you just had the computer speaker, the PC speaker. So there was no music, but nowadays I think it's very important.
I mean, even not fantasy. I mean, what do you think of? What are some of your? I guess what are some of your favorite soundtracks? You know, it doesn't have to be a video game. It could be a video game. Could be a fantasy role playing game. It could be the music we just listened to, or it could be anything. It could be a movie. It could be Streets of Rage 2, which I know is a favorite of yours. But
that's the entire Streets of Rage series, 1, 2, and 3. To hear it evolve, like. It was the hippest video game soundtrack I've ever heard. It was like dance music from the inner city. Somehow these people in Japan were aware of it and sort of did their own take on it. And I loved it. Especially Streets of Rage 2. Yeah. We've talked about that.
What are some of your other favorite soundtracks? It could be for anything.
For anything?
It doesn't have to be. Yeah.
The film Sideways has this kind of kitschy, borderline corny jazz soundtrack that is just, it makes you want to hang out with these people. It makes you want to hang out with Paul Giamatti and have some wine. That's a lot of fun. Great soundtracks. Tom Petty did the music for a movie called She's the One. Like, nobody remembers the movie. But on that soundtrack is the song Walls. I think everybody knows the song Walls by Tom Petty. Look it up. It's a classic. That's great. The music from Doom just rocks so hard. Just like, it's like hard. It's like metal on like MIDI instruments, and it just rocks. I love that. It's great music to shoot demons to.
I like I know my girlfriend doesn't like it, but the Akira soundtrack, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And it has like these weird Japanese drum tracks that just I really like. And then I don't know about the whole soundtrack, but like Conan the Barbarian, I really love the I love some of the music on that.
Riddle of Steel, man. Riddle of Steel.
And then a soundtrack that is probably more famous than the movie is Koyaniqaatsi, which Phillip Glass composed for it. And they use his music in like all sorts of the music from that movie and all sorts of other movies, like Watchmen. Like you said, they used some of that. I don't know. Have you heard that one before?
I don't know that I have, but I'm a fan of Phillip Glass. What is it? Music from the Room Upstairs, something like that. Like, if you want to talk about somebody influential, like his minimalist style, people took that and ran with it. Like, you can hear his influence everywhere. It's great.
Yeah, well, like that movie is like this weird. I don't know if you call it a documentary. It's like a art film / documentary, and it's not mainstream in the least bit. But that soundtrack, it's like they've used that music everywhere. And it's very. I really like it. Like I used to wake up and put it on in the morning and get my day going because it was very. I don't know. It's not like amped up music. It's just kind of interesting, I guess, to say the least. So
I agree. It sets a mood. In the upper room is what I was trying to say, not the room upstairs. In the upper room, Phillip Glass.
And then I really like Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Oh yeah.
You have Sue George, who's a samba, it's like Brazilian samba musician doing David Bowie covers, which is acoustic David Bowie covers in Portuguese, which I really dig. So that was another favorite of mine.
Yeah, that's super fun. And the credits roll on the guy. He's performing Queen Bitch, and he like doesn't he finish the whole song by the time the credits?
I think
end?
so.
It's great. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he just plays David. His whole job in that whole movie is just play David Bowie songs.
Can't miss. Can't miss with those.
Nope. And that guy is, I don't know, he's in one of my favorite foreign language films, which is City of God, which is about a favela in Brazil. He plays like. Have you seen that movie?
I've never seen
Oh.
it. I've never seen it.
Oh, all right. Well,
I got to check it out.
if you ever do a Cruel to Be Wind and you're looking for a guest recommendation, I would recommend that movie.
Hey,
it's pretty good.
We do listener picks, so yes, we can do that.
Yeah, it's pretty intense movie. It's like a crime movie, so if you like that. So
cool, man.
Jeff, do you have your dice still next to you?
I do.
All right. So I like to kind of, at some point in the show, and I say I'd like to, this is only the 4th episode, do kind of like random questions where you would roll your dice, and then I look at this chart or whatever.
Oh, cool.
That I have in front of me.
All right.
And then that will be the question that we answer. So can you go ahead and roll your D20 for me, please?
Yes, of course. Here we go. 19.
Okay, 19. What do you buy way more than most people?
Oh my gosh, what do I buy way more than most people? Antiquated electrical, there's a better way to say that. Antiquated electronics, I guarantee. I purchased a big stack of mini discs not too long ago, and I'm in the market for a old school tape and CD deck. That's my answer. Just old electronics.
What's the appeal there? Like, what makes you so interested in that stuff?
I don't know. I'm fascinated by media that didn't quite make it, but that has merit. So, like, a top-loading VHS player or mini disc, or someday I might even be interested in having a laser disc player in our home, stuff like that.
Do you use it, or does it just pile up in like a closet somewhere?
That's the issue. It tends to pile up in a closet. Angie loves it.
Where do you look for this stuff? Are you like seeking it out? Are you like on eBay or going to thrift stores? I guess, how are you finding this stuff?
It's mostly eBay, Reverb, which is, the marketplace for musical instruments and musical equipment. And yes, if we pass a thrift store in Chicago, I'll check it out for sure.
Do you have like a gem, like something you found and you're like, this, like something you prize more than others?
Yeah, I do have this. It might be right here in this desk. This mini disc player. It was like top of the line in 2005. Hang on. It's the Sony Hi-MD Walkman. I'm showing it to Jared. I know you can't see it, dear listener, but it just like flips open. It's really like satisfying to flip open physical media like that. Let me see if I can get the audio here. There you go. So it was like, ooh, CD quality recording in 2004, 2005. Whoa, crazy.
Cool. All right. Go ahead and roll your dice again.
Seven. Lucky 7.
All right. So this might be hard for you because you haven't played a lot of D&D, but what battle in a campaign has been the most memorable for you or your character that you've played in the past?
So you're right. I haven't played a whole lot of D&D. But for whatever reason, Elder Scrolls Daggerfall is coming to mind. That game would scare the crap out of me because the dungeons were so atmospheric, and it would be like dead quiet, and then you'd hear, if you were wearing headphones, you'd hear like some cackling like hag monster in your right ear. and then you turn to attack, and you're swinging with your mouse to hit this like horrible hag monster. But it's like you're not guaranteed to hit them each time. It's like based on chance. It's like real time rolling of the dice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're walking through this dungeon. You can get murdered at any moment, and you can't hit the thing that's killing you. That's the best answer I have.
That I have some memories of that game, but my memories of the game are like the overly detailed like character creation system. And I just remember it taking forever to like make a character because you had to.
So deep.
Yeah, and also that there was like nudity in the game. It was like weird. You could like strip your character down to being naked.
That was strange. Yeah, there were temples to various gods, and you walk into these temples, and there's just nude women standing around. Like it's like Paint, Microsoft Paint drawings of naked women. But yeah, they're there.
Yeah. And that first dungeon or whatever that you just start in, I remember it being hard to just get out of it. I'm just like, how do I just want to go to a town, and I'm just like stuck running around in my underwear with a torch trying to figure out how to get out.
That's what I'm talking about. And there's a rat. There's like a pre-rendered like, Donkey Kong Country was pre-rendered graphics.
Mm-hmm.
So you got this pre-rendered rat with red eyes like kicking the crap out of you, and you swinging your sword and you can't hit it because you felt defenseless until later in the game and your skills are built up. But
yeah,
great game. That's the best role-playing game I've played for feeling like you're in an expansive open world. Like that's the biggest world I can remember.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I'd always get killed because I'd always try to do something illegal in the game, like just to see if I could push the boundaries.
Of course.
It was kind of to me like Grand Theft Auto before Grand Theft Auto and like a fantasy world, because there was a quest or there was a story kind of that you could follow, but you could also just run around and like rob people and commit petty crimes.
Absolutely.
Which I remember kind of blowing my mind, and it still kind of blows my mind thinking about that it was just like a game on a CD-ROM back in the day.
I know. Yeah. And it was like a George Lucas sized universe. But yeah, anytime you push the boundaries, the guards come after you. Halt, 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 halt.
Mm-hmm.
They'd kick the crap out of you.
There was a Might and Magic game. I feel like it was Might and Magic 4.
Oh, I love Might and Magic.
And that you could also just run around and commit crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always just get arrested.
The best.
I probably liked Heroes of Might and Magic more because that was like, I think, turn-based role-playing.
Yes.
Or like, and that one was like a little bit. I was like just so young. I just remember being overwhelmed by the big huge world at the time when I would play those games.
They created a unique world. It was kind of goofy. Like it was part sci-fi, part fantasy, part like, I don't know, not Tim Burton, but it was kind of goofy. Some of the characters, the character design. Mm-hmm. It was a unique world. But yeah, I love the Might and Magic games.
All right, go ahead and roll again, Jeff.
Right. Here we go. 8.
All right. So once again, this might be kind of hard for you to answer, but what stereotypical group role does, I guess, your character that you are playing in, I guess it would be our campaign currently, in the party. So does Lady Sneaksworth play any, because she's the only one that's living, does she play any sort of stereotypical role that you can think of?
Well, she is a former bandit. That's part of her backstory. And I was actually thinking about this today, prepping for the episode. Whenever I'm placed in an open world fantasy setting, I always go towards thievery. Like I'm always sneaking around and like picking the wizard's pocket and stealing the king's gold. Which is strange. Like, I'm not an assassin. I'm not a warrior. Not a wizard. I'm always going towards thievery in Like in Morrowind, for example, I was a thief, and I don't know. I think it's about access. I think I just like having access, so that comes out when I play these games where you can set the rules.
Cool. What is it about being a rogue? You said it's access. Like, is that access? Does that play into the rogue?
Yeah, like,
thing? Or did you always want to steal something and never had the courage to do it? Or
because I don't want to steal in real life. I don't want to. If somebody's working hard for a certain lifestyle, I don't want to take them down a peg or two and steal from them. But there is something cool about sneaking past guards. You know, getting into the king's inner sanctum. I think it's about access. Like at the airport, for example, TSA pre, where you can bypass the main security line and like keep your shoes on and stuff. That's really cool to me. that's like a low level of access. But in a role playing scenario, I can ramp that up by 1,000% and like sneak past the guards, get the magic chalice. I've won the game because I'm so sneaky.
Cool. Is there any other games, role-playing games, maybe Daggerfall or I don't know, Morrowind or something, where you played a rogue? Or
Morrowind for sure. I was a wood elf thief. But you play those games long enough that you get good at everything, and you're like a godlike character. Like, I'm casting spells, I'm killing things with one blow. It's definitely Morrowind. Everything else, every other role playing game I play is like, Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger. Like, it's all predetermined, the characters. But Morrowind for sure.
Cool. Do you play like new Final Fantasy, or are you talking about like Final Fantasy 4 or 3 or something for like Super Nintendo?
Yeah, I'm talking about Final Fantasy 3 for Super Nintendo, Chrono Trigger. I don't play a lot of video games anymore, but back in the day, that was my bread and butter.
For sure. So since you do a movie podcast,
yes.
Are there any movie recommendations, like fantasy or even sci-fi movie recommendations that you would recommend to like the listener or something like that?
Movie recommendations. I feel like the movies we watch are mostly pretty mainstream. We just did an episode on Willow, directed by Ron Howard, and the story was by George Lucas. That's probably the highest fantasy we've done so far, and I enjoyed it. Angie didn't care for it. We were sort of split on that one, but amazing special effects. Revisit that one just to enjoy like the trolls and the dragon. It's pretty advanced for 1988, like the green screen effects and the monsters. So everybody knows that movie, but check it out if you haven't seen it in a while.
I think what's kind of interesting about that movie, and I could be wrong, but I think George Lucas wanted to do The Hobbit and could not get the rights to it. Yep. So he was just like, screw it, I'm going to do my own version of this movie. Granted, his version was like, there's like a baby. The baby, I don't know, maybe it was the One Ring to rule them all or something like that. But
yeah.
But it's got little people in it who are supposed to be hobbits, I guess, So
yeah, and he introduced these little people. They're called Nelwyns. I suppose Nelwyns are the hobbits of this universe. But then he introduces even littler people, these tiny, little mischievous characters called brownies. So it's like, how little, like, are there just infinitely little creatures in this universe? What are you trying to do, George Lucas? It does feel derivative. I hate that word, but yeah, it does feel kind of copycat-ish.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in forever. I just remember reading that, like, piece of trivia, it being like him wanting to do The Hobbit.
I could see that.
And couldn't.
You can feel that when you watch it.
There's something, I feel like, I don't know. There's some of those fantasy movies in the 80s. They feel fun to me, like more fun than some of that fantasy stuff that comes out today. You know, you had like, I don't know, would you consider like Time Bandits a fantasy movie, or is that like sci-fi? Or I mean, it's kind of in that that realm, I feel like, and that was like a really fun movie. I don't even know if that's 1980s. I'm just assuming it is
1980s. I've actually never seen it, and I should watch it for the podcast. But there is a sort of there's a trope that you don't see anymore of this adventurer who's always having a blast and making quips no matter how dire the circumstances are.
Yeah.
Like Val Kilmer as Mad Mardigan in Willow plays that part. Like there's a dragon behind him and he's got quips. He's you never feel like he recognizes how dangerous the situation is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Is that something you would prefer? Like, if you're playing a fantasy game or watching a fantasy movie or reading a book, do you prefer like a lighthearted, like the characters have more lighthearted approach to the danger, or do you think it should all be doom and gloom the whole time?
I think it can be done. But I do feel like in the 80s and 90s it was like a really overdone trope. But I feel like it could be brought back today with some care, with some tact.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another 80s fantasy movie with a baby being a central part of the plot was it Labyrinth with David Bowie? Just to go
Fantastic.
Back to David Bowie.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And I think David Bowie's name is Jared in that as well. Maybe it's Jarrett. I don't know.
I think it's Jareth.
Oh, okay.
But God, the songs in that are incredible. That's the first movie I ever saw in the theater. Number one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So David
That's
Bowie
cool.
for life.
Did you see that with your mom or your dad, or who would you see it with?
Dad, yeah. And Matt.
That's cool.
Older bro.
Nice.
Big bro.
Cool. Well, Jeff, that's probably coming close to our time.
Cool.
What is, I guess, before I let you go, I guess, is there anything you want to leave or let the listener know about you, your podcast, where they can find you? Any recommendations you might have for something?
I mean, this is gross. I will recommend my podcast I'm going to be honest with you, listener. Like, the market's flooded with movie podcasts. It's white noise at this point. But I think ours is unique in the way that we share personal stories related to each movie, personal memories. You know, the name of the show is Cruel to Rewind. Sometimes there's embarrassing memories associated with a movie. We share them. I hope that it's more personal. It's not just us, looking sideways at a movie and riffing and making fun. There's some heart to it, and the sound design is kind of fun. So come on over, check us out. And as far as recommendations, this podcast for sure. And play Elder Scrolls Daggerfall on an emulator.
I feel like this is pretty much an advertisement for a game that's like 27 years old, or I don't know how old that game is. It's over 20 though.
It's Bethesda propaganda at this point. They're gonna make some money off.
Forget Skyrim or whatever they're playing nowadays. You want those mine. So this is my son loves Minecraft, and he's like, why don't you love Minecraft? And I was like, because I don't want to play a game that looks like, I don't want to play a brand new game, not brand new, but newer game that looks like it was made when I was your age, like when I was an 11-year-old.
That's a good point.
And I was like showing him Daggerfall, and I was like, I don't want to play Minecraft because it looks exactly like this, like it's all pixelated and gross.
And he's like,
even though
graphics, yeah.
Well, we started looking at Daggerfall, and I was like, actually, Minecraft still looked better than it, but it didn't look much better.
Minecraft is so crisp and fluid, even though it's pixely. But my nephew loves it, and I get the appeal. They're building worlds in real time. It's incredible, but I get it. You want the latest graphics.
I don't know. I just want to know what I'm looking at. Like I want to know what I'm swinging at. That was like in Minecraft. You said you were fighting a rat, and the only way I knew I was fighting a rat is because it made rat noises. It didn't look like a rat. It just looked like a blob.
Yes.
So
it looked like a brown amorphous blob, but it made squeak sounds. Yeah, I get it.
I would think I was like talking to a merchant, and the only reason I knew that is because they had like an inventory. I didn't know what I was doing half the time.
I know. We talk about the nudity, but it took some serious examination to tell that that's what you were looking at.
Yeah.
Pixelated nudity.
If anything, check that out.
Yes.
For that reason.
That's my recommendation. Is Elder Scrolls Daggerfall. Oh boy. But this was
I feel like we were looking.
Go ahead.
Oh no! I feel like I looked at some other videos of other games from way back then for nostalgia's sake, and I was like, God, this is so barbaric.
These look like crap.
It's like Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2.
Oh yeah.
I really loved that game as a kid, and now I'm like, oh, doesn't look great.
That was my window into online gaming and rage quitting and cheating. That's the first, like, I would try to play that online on our 27 whatever kilobaud modem. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Dial up. Yeah. It did not go well.
I loved that game. I played it so much.
Great.
My entry to online gaming was just Diablo 2 more than anything. Trying to play it on 56K.
Yep.
And my mom being like, "Hey, I got to make a phone call." And I'm like, "Mom, I'm in the middle of a quest. I can't. I'm about to kill the monster. I don't know what it was, the boss or something.
Demon Lord Beelzebub or whatever." Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and since we were like a one phone line household, yep. I had to get off so she could I don't know, call her car insurance or whatever.
Those were the days. The dial-up.
Yeah. The dark ages.
The dark ages. That's super fun.
This podcast is brought to you by the AARP.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because that's...
Brought to you by Bethesda and whoever makes Diablo. I don't remember. Blizzard.
Yeah. The fourth one is supposedly coming out someday.
Cool.
But I haven't played the third one yet, so...
Me neither.
I actually have it. That's not true. I've played it twice. We have it. I have it on Switch, but it's not my Switch. So Javi usually wants to just play Smash Brothers.
Oh, sure.
And so I've only gotten to play Diablo 3 twice.
That's cool.
But I've played Streets of Rage 4. I beat that.
Nice.
That was fun.
I would give that a try. Anytime I try to play, I'm talking a good game about these ancient games from the 90s, but if I try to play a video game now, it's so relaxing to me now that I start nodding off like an old man. Like, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tetris Attack. Like if I'm playing an emulator or something.
Oh. Yeah. I feel like I always would say, well, I don't play video games now because they're expensive.
They are.
They take up a lot of my time that I can use to pursue other hobbies. Mm-hmm. I'm like, each game is like $70, and then meanwhile I'm like playing D&D now, and every time you buy one of these books, they're $50. So I'm not really. I just trade. So it's like I traded one thing in for another. And then when I play board games, board games are $50 to $100, and you maybe play those less than a video game.
Right.
So it's like...
But at least you got the craftsmanship.
So I'm not... Yeah, but I'm not saving money.
Right.
My money would probably be better saved if I just played video games.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Costs a lot to live in the fantasy world.
Sure does.
Rent ain't cheap.
No.
Oh, man. This was a blast, though.
Cool. Well, thank you for doing it. I'll probably have you back on one of these days and
sure, man.
See what happens to this character along the way.
See where
maybe he'll be alive, or maybe he'll be dead.
Will that friar murder come back to haunt him? I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe. Years later.
Yeah. Never know.
All right. Cool, Jeff. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much, Jared.